Conway's Game of Life is a 2D zero-player game that's played in a grid. A pixel on that grid is called a cell, and each cell can have two states, it's either dead or alive. But every cell has to follow a few rules. Any live cell with fewer than 2 live neighbors will die due to underpopulation. Any live cell with more than 3 live neighbors also dies due to overpopulation. Any live cell with 2 or 3 live neighbors will live on to the next generation. And lastly, any dead cell with exactly 3 live neighbors will come back to life due to reproduction. Every cell has 8 neighbors, and every cycle, which is referred to as a generation, every single cell checks those rules and changes its state accordingly. And with those 4 simple rules you can create unbelievable patterns, and today I decided to build it in Minecraft. Enjoy! So, how did I do it? Well, it's actually quite simple. Once you have one module for one cell that works and follows these rules, you're basically already done. And you can actually rewrite those 4 rules into only 3 rules. So rule number 1 would be any live cell that doesn't have exactly 2 or 3 live neighbors will die. The second rule is any dead cell with exactly 3 neighbors will come back alive. And lastly, a cell with exactly 2 neighbors stays in the same state. And that last one is really easy to implement. So what we need is a module that will check the state of all 8 of its neighbors. Then it needs to check how many are turned on. But we don't have to count all the way up to 8. We can just see if the amount of inputs that are turned on is either 2 or 3 or a different number. And then we need to compare that to the cell's current state. If we don't get a 2 or a 3 and the cell is alive, its state needs to change. If we get a 3 and the cell is dead, its state also needs to change. And that's it. That is all we need, because in every other scenario the state doesn't need to change. So let's take a look at how this translates to Redstone. So what you're seeing right here on the ground is all of the logic we're gonna need, and it does exactly what I just described. So the way we're gonna count how many neighbors are turned on is with signal strength. This part right here is called a signal strength adder. So what we're gonna do with each of these inputs is we're gonna subtract one signal strength from the maximum, which is 15, which comes from this torch. So we start with 15, and then all of the inputs, one signal strength per input, is going to get subtracted. So 15 minus 3 equals 12. And then if we subtract 15 again minus whatever the signal strength here is, which in this case is 12, we then get a signal strength of 3 again, which is exactly the amount of inputs we selected. So next what we need to do is identify the signal strength that gets outputted from this comparator. So right now we have a signal strength of 1, and that means nothing really is gonna happen unless the current state of the cell is turned on. Because when the cell is on and the signal strength isn't 2 or 3, well, the cell needs to die. And because both 2 and 3 are not powered, this torch right here is getting unpowered, which means it powers this input of this AND gate over here. And when the current state of the cell is turned on, that means we want to flip the state because the cell needs to die. If the signal strength is 2, now it does power this torch, which means no matter what the current state of the cell is, it's not gonna ask for a state change, because if we have 2 neighbors, the state of the cell doesn't have to change. So this lamp that indicates if the cell needs to flip its state is turned off. If we have a signal strength of 3, well, first we're gonna block signal strength 2 because that one is also powered, because of course we only need the highest number, and this also depowers this redstone torch. This torch is basically a NOR gate. It only gives an output when both inputs are low. So when we don't have signal strength 2 or 3, that means that the cell needs to die. But not just that, it also goes into an AND gate together with the current state of the cell. Because if the cell is dead and it has 3 neighbors, well, we need to flip its state because it needs to be alive again. And last but not least, when we have a signal strength of something greater than 3, we're gonna block both the inputs 2 and 3 right here with these comparators, and it's gonna allow the torch to be unpowered again, and now it's basically gonna act like we have a signal strength of 1. And to make sure it happens in cycles, so the state change only happens when we tell it to, I added a locked repeater right here. So right now we have a dead cell, and we have 3 live neighbors, which means we're gonna have to flip its state, and we can do that with the press of a button. Just like that. I have no idea if that made any sense to you, but now that we have all of the logic laid out, now we need to take this and compact it down into a 7x7. But not so fast. First we're gonna have to build a cell that where we can visually see what its state is, and also we needed to be able to communicate with its neighboring cells. So first I designed this. This is basically a lamp configuration that you can change the state of with this pressure plate. So underneath the pressure plate we have a piece of redstone dust which powers this redstone torch, which powers this dispenser with a powdered snow bucket. When the bucket is full, it emits a redstone signal of 2, but when the bucket is empty, when the dispenser has fired, then the signal strength is only 1, which means it doesn't power this torch and the state of the lamp is turned off. And that's what this top part here does. What the bottom part does is that's already kind of part of the communication with its neighbors. So right here I have a configuration of a 2x2, and I have built the purple circuit, which is for communication with other cells. So for example, this cell right here communicates with this cell over here. So right now the state of the lamps is turned on, which means this torch is also turned on, and this piece of redstone dust is also getting powered, and we can extend this redstone line into the next module where we can do something with this signal. And we do that on all 4 sides because it needs to communicate with the modules in front of it, to the right of it, behind it, and to the left of it. But of course it also needs to communicate diagonally. And that's where I have this little intersection right here. This module right here needs to communicate with this module. So when this module is turned off, this redstone torch will turn off, which will turn off this redstone dust. That means this redstone torch will get powered again, which powers this redstone line. And this goes all the way into the module over here. And the same goes diagonally in the other way, this module to this module. So this piece of redstone dust powers this block, which this torch is on, which powers this redstone dust, which powers this torch, which powers this redstone dust, which goes underneath and into the diagonal module. It's a mess, it's a huge mess, but it works, and that's what counts. So now that we have designed a cell that's capable of communicating with its neighbors, now it's time to add this logic. So first we're going to start with the signal strength adder right here. We need a better design for this because, again, these modules are 7 by 7 and this is definitely longer than 7 blocks. So first I thought of doing it like this, in like a square shape, but unfortunately this is just way too big, so I thought of maybe using a vertical one, and I compacted it down a little bit. And this is the final result. So in the back here you can see that we basically have the same thing as we do over here, just comparator, redstone dust, comparator, redstone dust. That's what this tower is. So comparator powers this block, which powers this redstone dust. When this redstone dust is powered, it powers this block, which powers the comparator, and so on. It just goes down, zigzagging, and in the end we have our final signal strength right here. So let's say we have 2 of the inputs turned on. You can see we get a signal strength of 2. And I added just that to our module over here. But of course we also need to connect our inputs to all of the inputs we get in our purple part. So that's what this spaghetti mess is all about. All of these purple glass towers, all of these torches, look at this. This is just, it's a mess. It's a huge mess, but it works and it does what it's supposed to. Also, it was a huge pain to design. But in the end, I got it. And nothing is interfering with something it shouldn't be. And we can test this. So let's select a few inputs. Let's do 2. You can see that we get a signal strength of 2. And I also ran these redstone lines all the way down. So I have 2 of these. So I have one over here and another one on the other side. But remember, we haven't implemented our logic yet. And that's going to go all the way down here. And with this logic, we need to be able to control 2 things. First of all, we need to be able to change the state of the cell. And second of all, we need to be able to read out this current state of the cell. And that's what this redstone tower here is for. So this one changes the state of the cell. So right now it's turned on and now it's turned off. And this very weird looking redstone tower over here, this is what tells us the state, the current state of our cell. And now we just need to add the logic, which was very fun to do. Now I'm actually serious. This was actually pretty easy to do and way faster than this mess. So I'm gonna try to explain this. So over here, these 3 pieces of redstone dust, this is the same as these 3 pieces over here. Actually, no, we're just ignoring the signal strength 1. We're only doing 2, 3, and 4. Because we didn't really need the signal strength 1. There was nothing connected to it. So to be able to save space, I could just leave it. And what we're doing here right now, the blue circuit is the same as the blue circuit over there. The blue circuit is all about blocking the signals from going in. So when we have a signal strength of 3, we want to block the signal coming from 2. And when we have a signal strength that's greater than 3, we want to block both the signal strength 2 and 3. And then these outputs go into their AND gates. So right here we got the signal strength of 2 going into the AND gate. And over here in green we got the signal strength of 3 going into an AND gate together with the current state. So you can see we brought that lamp over here, we brought that down so we could use it in both of these AND gates. And then the output of these AND gates come together in our familiar locked repeater. And this purple circuit over here, this is the same purple circuit we had over here to temporarily unlock the locked repeater. Because we want to give the cell enough time for it to process everything, and we want to make sure that every cell changes its state at the exact same time. Otherwise, it's gonna yeah, it's not gonna work. So when I press this button, it's gonna go into this torch tower and it will do two things. First, it will unlock the repeater. So this is what tells us if we want a state change. So if this is turned on, we want a state change. So it's gonna unlock the repeater to let whatever this state is go into the repeater, and then this purple part over here, this is actually another AND gate. This is looking at the state of the locked repeater and the state of the button. So if we didn't do this, and if this would constantly be powered, that means that this piece of redstone dust up here will also be constantly powered, and that means that we cannot do this. Basically, we can't change the state of the cell ourselves. So with this AND gate, it means that it will only give a short pulse whenever we press the button and the state of the locked repeater is turned on. That was a pretty big explanation. I hope it made some sense. I'm not trying to give like a tutorial about this or something. I'm just hoping that you at least kind of understand how it works and why it works. Now I did actually kind of mess up here because this over here doesn't take into account that the corners, some of the corners are actually in their normal state, they're turned off instead of turned on. So I had to change the design a little bit. So right here I built a 3x3 and you can see we got these gold blocks here. These are all around the edges of this thing to keep some lines powered because otherwise it won't work. We did the same thing over here with our big one. So we got some gold blocks on 3 out of 4 sides. So at this point I was basically done, because I had a working design and I could just copy paste everything. The only thing I really needed to add was a clock. Now my clock is 43 ticks. That's the maximum amount of time it takes for one module to process everything. However, I'm playing it safe and I'm doing 45 ticks. So I have a button right here which goes into a 1 tick generator or whatever it's called, and then I just have to put some repeaters here to make sure that all of the inputs, all of the buttons, things here, you know, it's the purple circuit that allows the state change to happen. And we just basically want that to happen at the exact same time. So if we go to our big one over here, oh boy, it's getting it's getting laggy again. If you go over here, you can see that I have, actually let's go over here. So this is our clock over here, our 45 ticks clock. As you can see that I played a bit with timings to make sure that every torch gets powered at the exact same time, no matter where they are. However, this thing is so incredibly laggy when it turns on that you can kind of see the updates happen in like a sphere around me. So when I'm running this, you can kind of see the lamps updating in like a circle around me that expands as if like chunks are loading, which is exactly what's happening actually. But yeah, this thing is insane. It's so big. It's huge and it's beautiful to look at. I mean, just look at this. It's so cool to just fly through the redstone, and I'm also very paranoid because if I touch one repeater or break one block, I'm never gonna be able to find it again. Compact redstone is just, it's awesome. It's the first time I've ever done like redstone when I was restricted to a size, because of course everything needed to be underneath this 7x7 shape. Now of course we do have some of these blocks sticking out, but I counted for that, so they don't interfere with anything. Right here I have another glass block and another concrete block, but these aren't connecting to anything on the other modules. Oh, also I made a map about this, and on maps the lamp blocks don't actually show, so you can kind of see this beautiful pattern of just a redstone underneath, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. But anyways, that was pretty much it for me today. I'm gonna do one more test. I'm just gonna randomly select some of these cells. Then I'm gonna do one last simulation, and then I'm gonna end the video because this has been an amazing thing to work on. It's been so much fun to. The redstone wasn't particularly difficult. It was just, you know, working in a restricted space. It was so much fun. So I've selected some random cells, and it's time for the very last simulation of today's video. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you, hopefully, in the next video. Enjoy the simulation!